Thank you. How's everybody doing this morning? Good, good. I want to thank Karen for having me. So I want to talk to you all here a little bit about, using cloud technology to drive business value. Now, this isn't very going into the technical pieces or anything like that, but it's actually how does the cloud become an enabler? And it's very fitting because as I just saw the end of what you were just talking about, it's about change. Cloud technology enables change more than anything else. I'm going to assume everybody here is familiar with cloud technology, so I'm not going to define that. But what I want to start with is a change that the cloud has brought about. I like to say that technology with the cloud no longer supports the business. Technology is the business. What I mean by that is that we were traditionally used to technology being something of a support function. It was something that we used in the background. It maybe ran internal applications, whatever it was. But now, what it is that it is fundamental to how businesses interact with customers. And I don't mean businesses selling software or things like that. What I mean is that it is integral to a business strategy. I'll give an example, which is banking. My wife works here at Wells Fargo. And I said, you are not working at a bank, you are working at a technology company that provides banking products. She looked at me and goes, no, we're a bank. I said, okay. I said, how do customers transfer money? Oh, they have an app. How do they cash checks? Oh, they have an app. How do they see their balance? Oh, they can go on the website or they can go to their app. I started to see a pattern, then the light bulb went off for my wife. Now, we've all heard about Wells Fargo in the news. That is what my wife is dealing with. That's about all I can say. But what I can tell you is that technology would have helped stop a lot of those things that you see that they are doing. Now, don't get me wrong, there were bad actors. But at the end of the day, again, it shows how technology is the business. It no longer just supports the business. Now, cloud technology isn't new. It didn't come out yesterday. It didn't come out a year ago. It's been around for quite some time. But it is having such a large impact on businesses. Something that we haven't seen really since, I would say, the computer. Right? Because what it allows businesses to do is to scale in a way like we've never seen before. I don't just mean scale up, handling more customers, but I think of it larger than that. What I mean is, if we think about what we used to have to do to get customers in different regions, in different global markets, what would you have to do? You'd have to have somebody in that global region or in that market, stand up a team, and everything else that goes with it. But now what you can do with the cloud is from anywhere in the world, you can stand up and get an application deployed or a service deployed or anything like that anywhere in the world. I can do it from here and I can do it around the globe. I am no longer locked in geophysically, right? That location is gone. I don't have to have a support team everywhere in the world in which I operate. I can do it from one place. Now we think about automation and things like that. So we're getting better. Again, technology is core to the business. It is not just supporting the business. The other part, too, is that it's not just about cloud technology. It's what we can put on top of that cloud technology. It's the things that we can layer on top of it and things that we can build on top of it. We have seen major growth in AI and ML recently and what that means. And yes, you can do that. We have customers that do this. They don't do it in the cloud, but they're constrained by that. What they do is they want to do it in the cloud because they can scale, because AI and ML requires lots of data. It's very data intensive. We need somewhere to put that. We need the horsepower, the compute power to run and analyze all of that. But you don't do that all the time. It's not a steady state thing that you're doing. You're kind of doing it up and down in waves. So what's the best way to do that? Pay for what it is that you want when you need it, and it comes back down. You don't have to pay for it again. So now you have this dynamic scale, this flexibility, this agility. That doesn't just happen with AI and ML. That is across the board. That is one of the things that the cloud now provides for customers. Now, what is the state of cloud adoption? Well, as of 2023, 50% of enterprises have workloads in the cloud. Now, I think that's a bit of a misnomer, because if you have one workload in the cloud, all of a sudden you have one in the cloud. Of those 50%, 7% expect to move more workloads in the next 12 months, and 48% have data in the cloud. What does this mean? People are embracing the cloud, but here's what I see working with our customers over the years. They take what they have in a data center, and they lift it, and they put it into the cloud. It's in the cloud, great. But they're not taking advantage of what the cloud provides. All they did was take what they already had and what they already knew and what they were comfortable with, because they didn't want to change, right? They just stuck it in the cloud and said, oh, we're in the cloud. This is going to do something better. Well, guess what they find out? They get very large bills that they were not expecting. Not only that, but there's two things that typically are on CIOs and CTOs' minds when it comes to the cloud. Anyone have a guess at what those may be? That's one. Anyone know what the other one is? Cloud waste. What's happening is things are just up there, but they were never looked at to run in an optimized way. They're not running efficiently, so therefore they're paying for it. They pay for it in two ways. One, the cloud bill, but then two, the amount of administration and overhead work that it takes to administer those systems. In other words, they got no benefit out of going to the cloud, but yet they're in the cloud. So we've got to think about, when we're going to embrace the cloud and we're going to go to the cloud, what does that really and truly mean? There used to be, well, there is still a joke, but it's like, oh, it's just somebody else's computer. Well, it's true, but the thing is that we've got to make sure we use that right. It's an opportunity to look at how we're doing things, again, going from the technology supporting the business to the technology being the business, right, and making that change and understanding how we can leverage that to unlock new things from different business capabilities. Now, one of my favorite parts of the cloud, because I come from a development background, is it unlocks the capability to change. You'll have to excuse me, I tried to do a word cloud. I didn't like the way it looked, so I just put it this way. But really what we're thinking about here is, when we go to the cloud, and this has to be a cultural shift. This is not necessarily a technology shift. It gives you these capabilities, but companies have to embrace this, right? What we have to be able to do is allow people to explore, to prototype, and to do something different. We got to think about how we can leverage cloud technology and the platforms that we put on top of it to be disruptive. If we're just taking what we're already doing, we move it to the cloud and we do no different, don't expect different results. I believe that is the definition of insanity. So we need to think about disruption. Now, I said fail forward. I'm not the biggest fan of that. I'd like to think of it as, what did we learn from something that didn't work? Maybe we tried to do something in a certain context that didn't work, but in a different context it would. But we don't know unless we try, and we have to be able to try. Now, the great thing, again, with the cloud is that it allows us to do that. Spin something up, try something new, doesn't work, spin it down. We have that flexibility, that elasticity to do that. The thing that we get with that is that we now start to learn. Maybe it's getting out of our comfort zones, which was mentioned earlier. And that's the important part, is learning, because if we just stay in our lane, we don't go outside of it, we don't see anything different, well, the competitor is all of a sudden going to be in a different lane, and they're going to start to move ahead. Right? So we've got to be thinking about, where can we learn and experiment and do things? This starts to come into innovation. Let people innovate. As human beings, we'd like to explore and do new things. And at the end of the day, too, it's about accelerating things. We can do things faster. I'm not saying that doesn't mean we don't have constraints. Remember, data security, cloud waste, things like that. we've got to make sure that we're doing things within reason and with controls, but not controls that slow us down. We don't want to say, yep, you can go and run and experiment all you want, but somebody's got a parachute behind. Now, one of the big things, too, is that when we think about this capability of changing, this learning and everything else, I talked about percentage of companies in the cloud and everything, and I actually found this statistic to be quite interesting, which is 44% of companies in the cloud adopt new cloud technologies pretty much the moment they come out. That's pretty impressive considering how often new things are coming out. Now, I will say, just because something came out, right? AWS, for instance, has a lot of services and stuff that aren't so great. But somebody's adopting and trying and seeing how they can potentially use it, right? They're experimenting. They're trying to figure out how they can use things. Now, I talked about AI, and there's everybody, I think, starts to have this fear of either Skynet or the Matrix with AI and that we're going to lose jobs and everything. I disagree with that. I think it's going to make people better. It's going to make companies better. As you can see here, within the next couple of years, AI is going to be embedded across business technology categories. And it's going to be across businesses in general, across different segments, everything. And if you look there, 60% of organizations to drive better outcomes without relying on technical AI talent. In other words, it's getting to the point where you don't have to be an AI expert or need an AI expert team to be able to leverage the technology. And we take that, and again, what that requires, and you put that into the cloud, and imagine what that can unlock. Because then the things that you find out, let's say new services, new markets, new segments, whatever it may be, new geos, whatever comes out of that on top of the cloud, now you can do that very quickly. Now, along with that, we see that here that 85% of enterprises are going to take human expertise, AI, ML, natural language processing, pattern recognition, and they're going to augment foresight with, look at that goal right there. Not replacing workers, increasing worker productivity by 25%. So in other words, per person, 10 hours a week until we go to a 32-hour work week, right? 10 hours a week, we're going to get an improvement per person. I don't know about you, but I see working with a lot of customers, they're probably doing tasks all the time that they're just like, I have to do this, but I don't want to do this. There's better things I wish I could do with my time. That's what gets us there. That's what gets us to be able to learn and experiment and fail forward and find that flexibility in that scale, in that grow to say, hey, you know what, this is the way that we've been doing things, but is there a better way to do it? Do we need to invest in this change? Now, what do I mean by this? Cloud technology allows infinite scale. A little tongue-in-cheek because, right, you can't scale past what cloud providers provide, but what they provide is so big that it's basically unbounded for any particular company. What does this also mean? What this also means is that I've talked about scaling into markets, but what about things like seasonal scale? Right? Retailers and stuff like that, let's say that they're selling summer goods, right? They're going to see a peak, or they see a peak around certain holidays, things like that. And that starts to change when you go around the world because there's different holidays and different seasons, right? Some places around the world don't really have a winter per se, but places like Colorado do, right? Ski resorts, when are people usually buying tickets? Not in July, right? Much later in the year. So we can peak. We can scale with that, really with the touch of a button. What this also means is that we can scale down. This is usually what's not talked about, but at the end of the day, businesses will exit markets. They will stop selling products. They will stop providing services that are not making money. You need to scale down the things that support that and the technology that supports that. So, using the cloud, you can do that. So it's not just a scale up in growth, but it's also thinking further forward about how can you start to scale down and unwind particular operations quickly. Because as you're starting to scale down, the longer it takes to unwind operations, you are paying during that time duration. You're paying to support it, you're paying whatever it is. Somebody's got to manage it. But if you can bring it down quickly, you can now take the resource and the focus and move towards where it needs to be in more value-add activities and things like that. Now, to start to wrap up, preparing for change. Now, I will say this is one of my favorite parts, and Karen has heard me talk about this before, but there's all these great benefits to the cloud, and that's great. But that doesn't mean, like I said in the beginning, that everybody's benefiting. Just because you took something and you moved it to the cloud doesn't mean you're getting the benefit of it. That's a cultural shift to think about, again, how do we take advantage of this new resource that we have? Right? You don't buy a faster car and keep driving slow. You buy a faster car because you want to drive faster. Now, when we think about the propensity for change, I want to talk through something that, quite honestly, it has nothing to do with technology, it has nothing to do with the cloud, but it talks about human beings and organizations and how we work and how we've got to change how we think about change. So I'm a big fan of F1, and a couple of years ago they introduced new regulations. Now, prior to these new regulations, the Mercedes F1 team had been a dominant team. Everybody expected with these new regulations they would come in and dominate. They did the complete opposite. They came with a concept that didn't work. And they tried last year. They made improvements, didn't really get them very far. Tried again this year. They've made some progress. But there's another team, the Red Bull team, that is just far above and away everybody else. Now, other teams have made improvements. Now, Mercedes has been trying and trying and trying. They've been tacking on changes. They're doing their best, but it's not living up to what they expect. So, what does that mean? Well, what they're going to do next year within the regulations, Mercedes is going to come out with a whole new car concept. Because they said, you know what we've been trying to do is not working. We have to change. So they are going to change. You might be saying, Josh, what does that have to do with cloud technology? Like I said, it has nothing to do with cloud technology. But what it has to do with is looking at things and saying, just because we've been doing it a certain way doesn't mean we need to continue to do it a certain way. And embracing the cloud, now with, again, that experimentation, that learning, that discovery, that failing and learning forward, we have the opportunity to change about how we think and how we approach things to be able to say, you know what, let's do something different. Raise your hand and say, this is not working. Or, you know what, this is working, but it takes half my week to do this. This is not a value-add activity. Let's try something new. Or if you're leading a team, allow people to raise their hand and say that. Now, let's be honest, some people will just want to change it because they want to change it. Okay, we hear them out, that's great. There's got to be a priority around change and understanding the value, because there's an effort to making change. We've got to make sure that that effort leads to a greater benefit than what we already have. And again, going back to the cloud, it unlocks that capability and supports the ability for us to be able to now embrace new platforms and scale and flexibility and everything else that goes with it, so that we can make sure that technology continues to be a core part and a driving part of business strategy. Because if technology is not a core part and is helping drive business strategy, those competitors that do are going to win. They will cross the proverbial finish line before you. So I thank you all for your time today. I'm around, and again, I thank Karen for having me. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the summit. Thank you very much.